How's it going, everyone? My name is George, and this is my review of the first Spider-Man movie to have ever come out, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, back from 2002, starring Tobey Maguire, Willem Defoe, Kirsten Dunst, and James Franco. Now, before I continue on, just a heads up, when I review older movies, these will contain spoilers because these movies have come out for a while. And if you haven't seen Spider-Man, which I hope you have, this film has been out for around 19 years and has been available on DVD, Blu-ray, many streaming services, TV. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you don't watch it, but if you have or don't mind spoilers, then please stick around. So, this film is one of the most important films in the history of comic book movies because this broke a lot of box office records. It got a lot of praise. And basically began, well, I wouldn't say began, but started the idea of superhero movies can be these big box office successes. And obviously this wasn't the first comic book movie to ever come out. You obviously had Christopher Reeve's Superman, the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton Batman films, and from Marvel, Blade, and X-Men. But this was the first one that really got people excited. So, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is basically about the origin story of Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire portrays Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, and he does such a great job playing this character. Peter Parker is obviously this nerd that doesn't have that many friends, but he lives with his aunt and uncle, and he gets bit by a radioactive spider and gains these powers, and he obviously goes through a tragedy with Uncle Ben's death and learns with great power comes great responsibility and becomes Spider-Man. I love this movie. I love how the origin story is portrayed. The pacing of this film overall is amazing because it's a 2-hour film, and the first hour is basically the origin story, how Peter Parker got his powers, how he learned to use them, the wrestling match, Uncle Ben's death, and basically learning with great power comes great responsibility. All that is told very well in the first hour. Establishing these characters is also very good. Tobey Maguire, as I mentioned, is fantastic in this role. Now, Andrew Garfield was very good, and Tom Holland is great, but Tobey Maguire, I think, stands out a lot because, not just because he was the first, but I think his Peter Parker stands out the most. I think he has the best Peter Parker. His Spider-Man's pretty good as well. I know some people claim he's not quippy enough, but I think what Raimi did for Spider-Man was basically have the quips there, but at times when the situation isn't overly serious. Because obviously the main antagonist of this film is Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, who I'll get to in pretty soon. But the quips are there, and they're hilarious. But yeah, overall, Tobey Maguire did a great job. Now, I know a lot of people give flack that Tobey Maguire was in his mid-20s when he played this kid in high school, and a lot of the actors were basically in their mid to late 20s when this film came out. But that was a popular trope back in the late 90s and early 2000s when people were portraying high schoolers. They would get actors in their mid or late 20s to play. So this was kind of following what Hollywood was doing at the time, but it's made up for a great performance. Now, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. Willem Dafoe is also fantastic in this film. Now, his Green Goblin doesn't get talked enough when it comes to the best superhero villains, because Green Goblin's a great villain in this film. I know the Power Ranger-like costume, it can be a little cringe, but honestly, the performance makes up for it. The Norman Osborn aspect of the character, the cold, heartless businessman, and then you've got the murderous, evil side of the Green Goblin. He portrays both sides very well. Now, another performance in this film, Kirsten Dunst, who portrays Mary Jane Watson. I remember when I was younger, I wasn't a big fan of this performance, but as I've gotten older and rewatched the film some more times, I kind of realized what Raimi was going for with this character arc as well. Basically, Mary Jane, yeah, she's the popular girl, she likes to party, but she's also in an abusive household. Her father puts her down a lot, always screaming at her. And a lot of the men in her life obviously don't treat her well, except for Peter Parker. And when she talks to Peter Parker, you learn more about her dreams, her aspirations. She opens up to him. And I really like the friendship and relationship that they go through in this film where, they're having these conversations, getting to know one another and getting closer. I think that was an aspect of the film that doesn't get talked enough about. And then you have James Franco's Harry Osborne. James Franco is also great in this role. And basically his character, Harry Osborne, he's Peter Parker's best friend. He sees Peter as a brother, but he's also jealous of Peter Parker. Because Harry, like Peter, likes Mary Jane. And he even dates her. But he also knows that Mary Jane might have some feelings for Peter, which she eventually does. And he also knows that Norman Osborn, his father, sees Peter as the son that Norman always wanted because Peter's a lot more smarter. And when you hear the conversations that Peter and Norman have, it's a lot more than the conversations Harry has with his father. There's obviously an awkward relationship between Norman and Harry, but when Peter and Norman talk, they talk about science. The graduation scene later in the film where Norman's saying, "Oh, Peter Parker, you won the science award." How impressed he was and how he even offered to help Peter Parker find a job. Just moments like that. Like, the focus on all these characters, not just Spider-Man. Obviously, Spider-Man, Peter Parker's a big focus, as well as the Green Goblin. But the focus on these other characters, setting up their story arcs for future films. And in this film, they do such a great job. The other cast members are also fantastic. Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben. Iconic, fantastic. In my opinion, the best Uncle Ben that we ever had. We haven't seen Uncle Ben in the MCU, so obviously there isn't all that much Uncle Ben, but in this film, he's great. Rosemary Harris as Aunt May, also great. J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, one of the best casting choices of all time. I really love this performance, and he's so iconic that the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon asked him to voice J. Jonah Jameson in that. And he plays J. Jonah Jameson in the MCU as well. Now, the special effects for the most part hold up very well. I think the only thing that I kind of noticed with the special effects, and it might have actually could have been the lighting, is the scene where Peter Parker in the wrestling Spider-Man outfit is chasing after Uncle Ben's killer. It kind of looks a little off. But all in all, the special effects are still great. Now, the second half of the film, like I said, the first half of the film is essentially the origin story of Spider-Man. The second half is the Spider-Man Green Goblin face-off. Green Goblin comes onto the scene. Spider-Man Green Goblin fight a few times. I really love the action, the fight scenes that these two go through. I really like how, and this is back to the beginning of the film, when Peter Parker, the spider DNA is starting to take effect. He's passed out. While that's happening, the Green Goblin's also essentially being born. Norman Osborn takes that super serum and it's going all wrong. But the Green Goblin comes out, the Goblin personality, and kills the doctor that's doing this experiment. I really liked how that happens at the same time. I also like how while Spider-Man and Green Goblin have this fight going on, Green Goblin also has a mutual respect for Spider-Man in the fact that he wants to offer his hand in a truce, but because Spider-Man has his moral code, he refuses, and it gets to the point where the Green Goblin goes after people that Peter loves, his Aunt May, Mary Jane, and that final fight, which starts with the bridge and then in the abandoned building, so tense because the Goblin's offering a choice for Peter to either save Mary Jane or these kids, and he's trying to save all of them. Very tense scene, but he prevails and saves them. But then the final battle comes. Spider-Man takes a pumpkin bomb to the head, and Goblin's just beating him up, and this is one of the best final fights because it's not two over the top. It's not flashy. It's like bare knuckle fighting. Well, not bare knuckle, but Green Goblin just beating down Spider-Man, kicking him down, and then Spider-Man fights back. And then he finds out that Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin. And then the death scene happens. Or so we think. Maybe he survived if the rumors of Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin being the main villain in Spider-Man No Way Home are true. Who knows? But yeah, the action's fantastic in this film. The score, Danny Elfman's score, I gotta talk about Danny Elfman's score. One of the most iconic. That and Hans Zimmer's Dark Knight trilogy score are my two favorites. From the opening credits to the final swing, the score is just super, super iconic. And the thing I love about this film is that a lot of superhero films nowadays tend to either go for a lot of jokes or being overly dark. The first Spider-Man film does such a great job of having light and dark moments. It's a fun film that has light moments. There's some cheesy moments. That's obviously been a complaint that's happened, but I don't mind the cheesy moments. I love the cheesy moments in the Raimi trilogy overall. But it also knows when to be dark and serious. Like, this has the perfect balance. Everything is paced so well. Raimi understands this character, and it helps that Sam Raimi is a big Spider-Man fan. He's a big comic book fan. And I recall one time Kevin Feige even acknowledging that before the MCU came about, the one director that he felt understood comics and understood these characters very well was Sam Raimi. And it kind of makes sense because he did hire Sam Raimi to direct Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So Raimi really understands Spider-Man. He understands that Spider-Man can be a fun, cheesy character, but at the same time also has some dark elements to it. And we've seen that throughout this film. And the end of the film, one of the things I love about it is even though the Green Goblin's defeated, you feel Spider-Man / Peter Parker didn't win because Norman Osborn's dead, Harry blames Spider-Man, and Peter's conflicted, and Mary Jane confesses to Peter that she loves him, but Peter can only be her friend or feels that he can't be in a relationship with her because it'll just put her in danger. So, despite everything that happened, Peter Parker doesn't win in the end, technically, even though he defeats Green Goblin, because he has to keep this big secret from his best friend, and he has to push away the woman that he loves. And even at the end of the film, when he says that this is my gift, my curse, that's true when it comes to Spider-Man. Like, if you've ever read any of the comics, seen any of the animated shows, even if you haven't seen any of the movies, Spider-Man is a gift, but also a curse, because on one hand, it's a gift where he can help all these people, he can do all these amazing things, but at the same time, it's a curse because it makes him late for class, it will make him late for work, it puts the people that he loves in danger, and might even cause them to hate him, like Harry Osborn. So, basically, the ending summarizes Spider-Man perfectly, and you have that iconic final swing. And overall, I love this film. I think outside of maybe two minor stuff, well, I wouldn't say the Goblin costume's a minor thing, because I never complained about the Goblin costume. I would just say maybe that one scene where Spider-Man chasing after Uncle Ben's killer, when he's starting to move from building to building, it looks a little outdated. I think that's the only thing that seems outdated out of everything else in this film. But for the most part, this is a near perfect film. This is my third favorite superhero origin story after Batman Begins and the first Iron Man film. So overall, I love Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film. I think it's an amazing film. I think the actors were perfectly casted in this film. The action was great. The scope of New York City is great. How everything's cut and paced. Nothing feels rushed. Perfectly paced. And overall, just an amazing film. Despite that tiny little thing, I gotta give Spider-Man an A+. I have a lot of fun with this film. And again, a lot of films that I would, in the past, they have one or two things that feel outdated, but overall, I can't blame the film for that time period. So yes, I'll give the first Spider-Man film an A+. This is my third favorite origin story, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go watch it, especially because its sequel, Spider-Man 2, it's a whole lot better, and I can't wait to review that film as well. But overall, those are just my thoughts on Spider-Man. Hopefully I can go more in depth with these films as we go through. This is the first spoiler-filled movie review that I ever did, and hopefully I did a good job. If not, hopefully I continue to improve. And in the meantime, what do you guys think of the first Spider-Man film? Is it your favorite Spider-Man film? Is it your least favorite Spider-Man film? How would you rank it on a scale of 1 to 10 or letter grade A+ to F? Comment below and let me know. And I just want to thank you guys for watching. And also, thank you for watching my last video. A lot of people watched it compared to some of my other videos, so I want to thank you guys for checking that out. And I don't really know what's the next film I'm going to do for my, I wouldn't say classical review series, but like older movie series. I still got to think about it. It could be Spider-Man 2. It could be something else. I'm not too sure yet. If you guys have any recommendations for me to check out, comment below and let me know as well. And please like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and share this video with someone that loves Spider-Man. And I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.